Hi, my name is John Kaplinger, and I'm a QA analyst here at Livefront. Welcome to part 4 of my 5-part series talking about accessibility testing for native apps. Today we'll be talking about testing in landscape mode. Be sure to check out part 1 of this 5-part series where I talk about what accessibility testing is and why it's important. So let's get into it. Landscape mode testing. What is it? Who uses it? How do I enable it? And what should I test? Also, I'll give you some tips, tricks, and gotchas that I've learned while testing. Let's start with talking about what landscape mode is. It's a feature that allows a user to navigate an app in horizontal mode versus vertically. It provides more space for those who need the extra space for content, and it has a number of WCAG guidelines that prescribe what's expected in the user's experience. So who uses it? Users who require their device to be mounted on a horizontal orientation, users who prefer to read text in a wider display area, or dynamic type users who need the text as large as possible. So how do I enable it on my Apple device? Well, it's pretty easy. First, you launch your control center by dragging that in. Then you make sure that the device orientation lock isn't enabled. Then just rotate your device. And there you go, you're testing in landscape. Same thing for Android. All you do is go into the quick settings menu, make sure that the auto rotate feature is enabled, and then rotate your device horizontally. So, what are some things I should test while in landscape mode? Well, making sure that all the elements on the page are displayed in a way that maximizes that extra space. If there's a map and a list, that you get both of those views maybe in the side by side. Can you navigate to all the elements while in landscape mode? A lot like voiceover and keyboard navigation, just making sure that everything is still accessible. Also making sure that what happens when you enable other accessibility tools while testing in landscape. Turn on voiceover talkback, try a keyboard, turn it to landscape, test that. What are some things you should consider when testing to make sure that the view is displayed in a way that maximizes all the space? On notch devices for iOS, making sure that the safe area is utilized correctly, that things don't bleed into that safe area. Also, making sure that when views are toggled, that you can still use them in a side-by-side fashion. What happens when transitioning between landscape and portrait mode? This is a good way to see if the UI can handle that performance change and not crash. So what are some things to consider when testing the UI/UX in landscape mode? Well, making sure that all the features that are available in portrait are still available in landscape. If they're not, having some way of knowing that they're not going to be available. Making sure that all things are still accessible, like with voiceover and keyboard navigation, that you can get to all the buttons. And making sure that like prompts, those error messages are displayed and not broken while in landscape. What are some things to test when enabling other accessibility tools? Well, can you still use keyboard navigation while the app is in landscape mode? Do voiceover and dynamic type features have any expected results when testing? And how does the app perform when switching between landscape and portrait mode? So what are some tips when testing landscape mode? Make sure you got both notched and notchless devices to test on. Make sure that when you're rotating the devices, that nothing unexpected is happening. And then enlarging the text. So yeah, making sure that when text is large and you're in landscape mode, that things aren't displayed outside of their containers. Tricks? Well, quickly rotating the device's orientation is a good way to crash an app. Also, performing an action while rotating the device is a good way to see what happens, like if it's going to complete the action because you rotated the device. When launching the app in landscape mode, that making sure that there isn't anything unexpected going on with the startup of the app. And some gotchas? Well, be sure to check on those notch devices because sometimes the safe area will have elements bled into it, so you won't be able to read things behind it. On Android, it's default behavior for the keyboard to take up the entire screen when launched, so Just beware of that. That's by design. Also, landscape designs can display a little differently depending on which side the top of the device is oriented. So along with great accessibility testing comes great bug reporting. What you should do is make sure you capture a screen grab of that problem happening. Make sure you describe what you expected to happen. If you rotated it, that you expected something to appear and it didn't, make sure you say that. Also, make sure to include the impact of the issue, and then making sure that you provide the WCAG guidelines that are relevant to the issue. Congratulations! You now know the basics of testing a native app while in landscape mode. Things we learned: making sure that elements on the page are displayed in a way that maximizes the extra space, making sure that you can still navigate to all the elements while in landscape mode, and making sure that while other accessibility tools are enabled, that there aren't any negative effects. Now go out and use this knowledge to improve 100% of users' digital experiences. And be sure to check out part 5 of this 5-part series where I talk about testing for users with limited mobility.